Thank you for taking the time to understand your child's MAP test results. In order to get started, you'll need your child's MAP test score report, which is called Student Progress Report at the top, and it has an NWEA logo in the left-hand corner. It was mailed to you with your child's report card. You'll also need the chart of norms, which in the top left-hand corner says 2011 Reading Status Norms, RIT values. So before we get started, I want to just review a little bit of information. The test that your child took, the MAP test, has several sections depending on your child's grade level. Kindergarten students take only a math test and a reading test, whereas students in grades 3 and up take math, reading, language, and science. So depending on the age level of your student, the score report will be longer or shorter. There are a few important key points to go over before we look at your child's score report. These are the MAP test basics. The first thing to keep in mind is that the MAP test is a computerized test. All students kindergarten to 8th grade take the MAP test in the computer lab, taking one section per day. The next thing to keep in mind is that the test is adaptive. This means that as students get a question correct, they will be given a more difficult question, and as they get a question incorrect, the difficulty level will be lowered. The test is designed to find out what students are ready to learn next, so that all students are continually challenged and learning to the best of their ability and to the highest point of their potential. At Altaloma Christian School, we give the MAP test once a year in the spring. So when you look at your child's score report, you will see a score from spring of 2014 and spring of 2015, and will be able to make a growth comparison. If your child did not take a test last year in 2014, there would not be a growth point, but you would still have a score report from this year for the test that they did take. The next important point to keep in mind is that the MAP reports scores based on a RIT scale, R-I-T scale. These are units of measurement, much like a yardstick, that help us to keep in mind how a child's academic growth can be charted from year to year. The RIT scale is an equal interval scale, which means that within each subject, so reading, math, language, science, the scores are different, so you cannot make comparisons between subjects, but only between that individual subject as it's reflected on the norm chart and your child's score report. A question that we often are asked is about the Common Core state standards. At Altaloma Christian School, we don't specifically adopt a curriculum that will exactly meet the Common Core state standards, but rather we keep them in mind as a point of coverage, but our goal would be to exceed what the standards require so that students are more than fully prepared as they advance to the next grade level. The MAP test questions are based on the Common Core state standards. So what our scores indicate that our students are more than fully prepared and are exceeding the Common Core state standards. The last point that I wanted to review is that the test is growth focused, asking the question, what is my child ready to learn next? The test is focused on growth of skill level rather than grade level. So students last year in 2014 who were already exceeding their grade level would start at that point of where they were already exceeding instead of being constrained to a test that begins at their current grade level. And you'll understand this more as we look at some of the comparisons. Next, we're going to look at the norm chart along with your student progress report. So the norm chart looks like this right here, and we're going to focus on math, so just look at the math section, which you see right there. And this is a sample student score report. We'll look at that as well to make some comparisons. So focusing only on the math section that is at the top. This is a student who is currently in first grade for 2015, and they were in kindergarten for 2014. And I can tell that because I'm looking right here at their grade level and the year. Okay, the year is there and the grade level is right there. So as we look at this, we see these color bars, the blue, the orange, and the yellow. The blue is your students, or if this was your student's score report, the student RIT score. Okay. The orange is the district grade level mean RIT score. For us, our district is our school only, and that would be our current grade level. So for kindergarten, it would mean both kindergarten classes. For first grade, it would mean both first grade classes. Okay. And then as we look at the yellow is the norm grade level mean RIT score, and that is for the nation, which includes public as well as private schools, Christian schools, all schools where students take the MAP test. Let's focus for a moment on the 2011 Mathematics Status Norms RIT values. The sample score report that we're looking at is for a first grade student. We are always going to be looking at these end of year means over here in this column, okay, as we compare that number to the number for the student score, the student RIT, the district grade level mean RIT, and the norm grade level mean RIT. Okay, so for a first grade student at the end of the school year, a 50th percentile grade level norm would be 179. A 50th percentile grade level norm for a kindergarten student would be 159, right above that here. A 50th percentile grade level norm end of the year, and again this is only in math, we can only use these numbers per subject. Second grade would be 191.3, and so on, each grade level going down. So as we're comparing this sample student score report, we'll take a look here, again focusing only on math. We see that this first grade student's score report in spring of 2014, looking here, this student scored 155, and looking in spring of 2015, they scored 184. So now we're going to take those numbers and look at our chart. So looking at the two of these side by side, our sample student this year in first grade has a score of 184. So looking here, end of the year first grade mean would be 179. So the student scored higher than the national norm RIT value. So the next question we should ask is how much higher did they score? So remember, the MAP test is not a grade level test. Students in first grade may have the same questions as or the same types of questions as students in kindergarten or second grade or third grade. A third grade student who's very advanced in math could have similar questions to a 7th or 8th grade student. It just depends on their ability level and what their score last year indicated they were ready to learn next. So this student's score of 184 would place them just shy of middle of the year for second grade. So that is approximately how much above their grade level they scored. Now, we can look over here and we see, let me take this off. We look at the orange, that is our school or our district mean, 184. So it's exactly even to the score. So our entire first grade class is scoring at about a middle of the second grade level. And then if we look at how that compares to the national average, the national norm, that is 179, which should match what is right here. Right here, the 179 will match this 179 right here. So this column here at the end of the year mean should always match our yellow, which is here. So now let's look back at last year and look at how the student did compared last year comparing to this year. So last year we're going to be looking at the kindergarten number and then the student's kindergarten number. For last year, we can find that by looking right here. So their last year's score, RIT score, was 155, which we can see right there in the middle, 155. So we can also see last year's scores right here in this part, and there's that same 155 that we saw over here. So looking at 155 for end of the year kindergarten, the end of the year mean for kindergarten was 159 last year, so that student was a little bit below the norm, below the 50th percentile at the end of the year last year. But you can see now they've made great growth because they've jumped all the way to 184, which is about middle of the year for second grade, one grade level ahead where they now are. So that is some strong growth. Now we'll take a look at reading. So we're looking here on this side for kindergarten reading or first grade reading. That's on this side of the paper. And then reading scores are right here. So we're looking at a reading score for this student of 190 right here. So remember, the blue is your student, your child. So when you look at your child's score report, and this is 2015, so we're looking at this year for reading for this first grade student. 182 was our school average, our district average, our school. 177 is the national average. So our school average of 182 versus 177, our school average was that much higher than the national, and then this student scored 190. So if we look over here at our reading means, we have for first grade, end of the year, 176.9 is the end of the year, or 177, which again matches here with our yellow number. So the question then is, where does our school average of 182, where does that fall? That would be just shy of middle of the year here for second grade, which is 183.6, very close. And then this student's score of 190 would actually place him or her at the beginning of the year for third grade. So they are an end of the year first grade student scoring at a beginning of the year third grade place in reading. If we look at how did they do last year in kindergarten, their kindergarten score was 165, and you should find that right here. This was the 2014 the student score 165. So for kindergarten, that would place them right in between beginning and middle of the year for first grade. So they also made more than one grade level of progress, which is very good. We can also look at their national percentile range, which we can find over here. And it's the bold number in the middle, so you can see for math in spring of 2014, the student was at a 38th percentile, below the national average, and then for first grade, they went up to the 65th percentile, so 15 percentile points above the national average. And then for reading in kindergarten, they were at the 73rd percentile, and in first grade, it's 81. So keep in mind, kindergartners are very young to be taking this test, so are first grade students, but last year was the first year they took a test like this on the computer, so they're still learning how to take a test. So those are good strong numbers. That 81st percentile would place them in the top 20% of the nation. Let's look at another score report. This is an 8th grade student. So last year they took the test as a 7th grade student. This year they took the test as an 8th grade student. So we'll focus on math first, since that's at the top of the score report. And that would be the same on your student's score report. Remember, blue is this student's average or norm, the student's RIT score. Orange is the district or our school RIT score, mean or the average score, and then the yellow is the national average, the norm grade level RIT score. So for 8th grade, if we are looking here for math, we would be looking at a national average of 234.5, which we find there, and rounded that is 235. So that's what we would find here as well. So you can see, looking back at last year for 7th grade, the national average was 231, which again is the same here and here. So let's focus on spring of 2015. Our student was 240, and so was our school average, 240. So they were right at our school average, which is both scores are above the 235, the national average. One thing that you'll notice with these scores, remember, for math we have to only look at the math norms. For reading, we only look at the reading norms. The same for language arts, we only look at language arts norms. And for science, we only look at the science norms. So as we take a look here and we see our student scored 240, so if we look here on our math numbers and we want to know, where does 240 fall on our chart of norms? Right, we know that our 7th and 8th grade was right here. So 240 is going to, we're going to look on the chart over here, and we can see by looking at our last number here is 238.3. So our students, sample students number was 240. So they are a little higher than that. And that last number, the 238.3, you can see that is 11th grade. You can see right there. So they scored higher than 11th grade. So the higher that you move up the chart, the more difficult it is to move up to a higher number. So as you move down grade levels, the gap in between the numbers gets smaller and smaller. So you can see up here in kindergarten level to first grade, it's almost a 20-point spread, but when you get down here, it's only 2 points. So the higher the grade level, the more that standard deviation is closer together, and those numbers are closer. Okay, let's take a look at reading on this same sample score report. This is again our 8th grade student who was in 7th grade last year. So for reading, we see the national average for 8th grade was 222. And we can find that two places. We can find it here and here. Okay. So our student's score was 226 this year, 221 last year. Remember, the higher you go up the grade level, the smaller, the closer together the numbers will be, the smaller the difference between them. And so we can see our students 226 actually places them beyond 11th grade. And the 221 that they scored last year placed them as a 7th grader at the beginning of 9th grade. So it looks like they went at least to almost 3 grade levels of improvement in this one year. And our school average was 228. So although the student score of 226 was a little bit below our school average of 228, they still did very, very well because they're still beyond 11th grade in their score. So let's take a look at their percentile over here, where we have 7th grade and then 8th grade up on the top. So 7th grade, they were at the 54th percentile, just a little above the national average. In 8th grade, they're at the 60th percentile. So it is going a little higher. So that is also a good. So as we conclude, let me just say a little bit about the norms. You can see it says 2011 norms. And there were some new norms that came out this year, the 2015 norms, based on this year's score results. And testing companies update their norms every few years. We wouldn't want to update them every year because then the baseline number would keep changing. But they did have some new numbers. Our score reports are not geared towards them since this is the year that we took the test. But on next year's test, you'll see the difference. So how they arrive at the norms, the study's results are based on kindergarten to 11th grade samples, and a sample was comprised of 72,000 to 153,000 student test records from approximately 1,000 schools. Depending on the subject, these were randomly drawn. The samples come, again, this is for the norms, are drawn randomly from test record pools of up to 10.2 million students attending more than 23,500 public schools spread across 6,000 districts in 49 states. And then they also use some of the private school data. So these are very strong norms that are arrived at with a lot of comparison as well as random sampling. So these results are referred to as norm referenced. And again, we're looking at our end of the year norm numbers. You can reference the others to see how much above or below, but just to give you an idea of how much the norms changed, the norms actually went down, which means our students scored even higher in comparison to the norms. So for instance, in reading for the 2015 norms, the end of the year norm was 177.6 for grade 1. So if we look at that compared to 176.9. And for 8th grade, it was 220, so that is a little lower. So the first one was actually a little higher, 177.6 versus 176.9. But those are not really that's not what we're looking at. For the most part, the numbers were within 1 or 2. And with just a few exceptions, the new norms are lower than the old norms. So you still have a good, strong comparison number there. So using this information, take a look at your child's score report, remembering to match up math with math norms, reading with reading norms, and so on, and focusing on their growth from year to year, as well as knowing your child. And keep in mind, this is one snapshot of their performance on one test, one section per day. So considering their age and grade level, their experience in taking a computerized adaptive test, and so forth, just bear that all in mind as you look at the scores. And if you still have questions, read the parent toolkit, which was an attachment to the email that you received from me containing this video. And you can also visit www.mwea.org for general information about the MAP test. Although MAP is new for us here at ALCS, this is our second year of participating. The test has actually been around and been in various forms with NWEA for the past 40 years, so it's not a new assessment instrument. And if you have particular questions about your student, feel free to send me an email, or after July 6th, you can address your email to Mr. Nichols, our incoming principal, and his email address is there on the slide as well. Thanks so much for taking the time to review your child's scores and to make those comparisons to the norms, and for the trust that you place in us in partnering with you to educate your child. God bless you.